Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Anthony Kaufman. I'm the senior programmer at the Chicago International Film Festival. Thanks for tuning in to our conversation, our morning coffee talk, Spellbinding, Documenting Faith and Power. I'm very excited to have with us three filmmakers with films at the festival. Yoav Shamir, who has a film called The Prophet and the Space Aliens. Yoav is an acclaimed documentary filmmaker. Many of you may know his film Checkpoint. We also have Maya Zinstein with the film at this year's festival called Till Kingdom Come, and she was actually at the festival a few years ago with a film called Forever Pure. And Carmine Grimaldi, and his film is playing in the shorts program, When 2 and 3. Thanks so very much for coming. This is kind of just an informal conversation. We were looking for thematic currents between some of the films for these coffee talks, and I was thinking this would be an interesting discussion. Your films all do deal explicitly with religion in some way or another, but in very quite different ways. So people tuning in may not know your films, right? Because this is showing independently of the screenings. So if you could just tell us very briefly what your film is about. Carmine, why don't you start?
Thanks for having me. So the film is about a couple in the high plains of the desert in Arizona, and the pastor and his wife are the last members of the congregation.
Yep, that pretty much sums it up. Okay, Maya.
Yes, hello everyone, and Anthony, thank you for having me again in the Chicago Film Festival. I wish I could be there physically. Previous time it was much better, but it is what it is. So my film, Till Kingdom Come, is about the influence of Christian evangelicals on Israel and their involvement here, and it basically tracks. It's a story of a small congregation in Middlesbrough, Kentucky, a tiny town in the Appalachia, where 3 generations of pastors kind of leading their congregation to support Israel. And this very poor and small place is actually one of the biggest donors of the Fellowship of Christians and Jews, which is the biggest philanthropic organization in Israel. So we're tracking the young pastor from Appalachia, Boyd Bingham, and the president of the Fellowship of Christians and Jews, Yael Eckstein. And on the top of all that, there's the policy of President Trump here in the Middle East. And basically, I'm showing how it's deeply influenced by the Christian evangelicals.
Yoav?
Hi, hello, nice to be here with everybody. So my film is called The Prophet and the Space Aliens, and it follows Israel, was originally French, and after he said that he met extraterrestrials in the 70s, he started his religion or cult. The film deals with this question as well, what's the difference between cult and a religion? And we're basically taking his story, the story of his coming to power, the Iranian movement or religion or sect or cult or whatever you want to call it. And then through this story, which serves as a sort of a case study for how religions are being born, and we're asking some questions which are kind of like philosophical about religion. So would a new religion can be born in our lifetime? Or if I would make a documentary about Jesus at the time that he was active, what kind of like uncomfortable truth we might have found or maybe did not find, I'm sure that people that are supporting of Maya's film, The Evangelistic, I don't think that we would find anything wrong, but I mean, maybe. We can never know because it all happened a long time ago. And so we're using his kind of like unique story, which is a lot of fun as well, to kind of like ask more existential philosophical question about the nature of religion and faith and these type of things. And we have a very prominent U.S. Scholar called Professor Daniel Boyarin as a mentor. So he kind of like walks us through the film and highlight this kind of like what might call silly things with a very kind of like broad perspective. And so it's kind of like an unusual film, I would say.
So I think it's interesting, both all the films in some way show religion as both something obviously very important to the people involved, but I feel like there's something in all the films that also suggests that maybe the religion is misleading the people, or is or maybe misleading isn't the right word, but you know, is not necessarily putting them in the best positive way, or you know, is somehow, yeah, putting them off center, or I'm not sure how to put it, but and it's not exact in all the films, but I'm wondering if you can see where I'm heading. Anyone want to jump in?
No,
Yeah,
you seem like you're doing a good job at tanking it up inside this issue. So go on.
I can say something. I think there's we need to kind of separate the idea of faith, which I think is extremely important for human beings. I think it helps to believe in something, and yeah, and we spent a long time in this impoverished town to basically to see how the faith is important and how this hope for better life is, you know, that the faith kind of gives it to these people that basically live kind of hopeless life, and many of them. It gives them, you know, joy and this hope for redemption. You know, it's something that I can, yeah, I can understand that, and I think it's very human. I think the problem starts when these feelings start to be used as a political tool, and then it starts to be corrupted, and then you see how this very pure emotion can start to be transformed, and then these people becoming maybe a tool in a much bigger story that, you know, basically, but the very basis of it, I'm not against religion in any level. If you would ask me, I would say that I do believe. I'm not a religious person in any level. I'm a totally secular person, but I do have faith in my life, you know, and it doesn't matter in what exactly I'm believing. It doesn't, but I do understand how it's important. So I think it's, and in my field, I'm really trying to crack this, you know, this mix of where it's okay and where it starts to be actually really corrupted and can bring people to maybe without having any like intentions to do quite problematic things.
Carmine, you want to jump in? I don't know if misled is necessarily the way I would put it for your characters, but I also, you know, it does. I do question, you know, their situation.
Yeah, I mean, to talk about this question of faith and the way that faith can be a sort of some sort of like respite from trouble or from loneliness. You know, I think that's happening with the couple I'm filming. But I think maybe the tension you're seeing is that, you know, faith can purport to be sort of like a panacea to all the problems. And I think part of what I was looking at is the way that faith has a lot of different emotional layers. That there's layers of loneliness, there's layers of sort of an erotic tension. There can be all these elements that are within what can otherwise seem sort of like a flat claim to eternal salvation and these sort of things, trying to untangle the various strands in them.
Yoav, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one, you know. Like I'm kind of like I don't know like quite really how to answer it. But I mean, it's just before the call, like one of the Radiant followers who I've been in touch with, like eventually you make films and you keep in touch with some of the people. Then he sent me like a message asking me like what is the kind of like credibility level I'm giving Rael, like 50-50, more or less, this type of thing. I didn't answer him. I don't know how to answer that. So I think also I don't know how to answer your question because it's a tough one. So for me, it's kind of like I'm looking at religion a little bit like a game that you really have to be really involved to enjoy the game. So if you're not really, if you don't, it's like a basketball team, right? Now you have the playoffs, right? Or just ended. So I mean, if you don't really want to like win, so there's no point in playing almost. You don't like some sports. Just to enjoy the game. It's not really working. You wanna win. You wanna like kind of like play by the rules. You embrace it, and in order to do that, you have to believe that it's real. I mean, so whether God exists or not, that's not for me to say. But I do believe that religions are man-made. These are constructs made by people. So it's a kind of like it's a problematic situation. So what do we do with this game? Can we play it really without with realizing it's a game? And some people can do that. Very few people. So for example, this Professor Boyarin, which I talked to, which is actually he's an Orthodox Jew. He started off as being an atheist, coming from a secular family. So he told me like he phrased it in a very interesting way. He said, "I don't pray because I believe. When I pray, I believe." It's a very small kind of like sentence which actually concludes almost everything for me. The notion of religion. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I tried.
It was a fine answer. It was an interesting answer. It was good. Speaking of tensions, I'd like to ask you all about the tension between filming these characters who obviously have very strong held beliefs, which some of the audience may find strange or different, and yet I think you also show sympathy and we like these people. I mean, Rael, for instance, in Prophet and the Space Aliens, he could be completely crazy. But he's also very likable and charming in the film. I think the characters in When 2 or 3, there's a sweetness about them, at the same time as they seem very foreign to probably lots of audiences. And same with Maya. So I feel like that's a tension too in all of your films. Maybe you could talk about that dynamic. Oh, someone jump in. Carmine.
Yeah. So I don't share the beliefs. And when I showed up, there was sort of a question of what I was doing there. It was I knew their grandson from another film project, so I just sort of showed up at their house one day and started filming with them. And they, what the type of film they anticipated versus the type of film that I wanted to do were pretty far apart. And I think one of the things is that Norm, the pastor, thought this would be sort of about him and about about what his sermons and his ideas. And I became really interested in Kay, his wife and the only congregant, and the way that she was experiencing it, the way that she was looking at him, the way that she would become enthused with sort of a divine energy. And so there's this tension when filming, which is that I really just wanted to film her. And I just wanted to film her and very close, very like intimately film, mostly just the subtle reactions on her face. And at first, that obviously came off as odd and created friction. And there was a lot of conversations about what sort of film I wanted to do, what sort of film they wanted. And so in a sense, there was a sort of collaborative process of talking about what this film would look like and what I was imagining. And we sort of over time began to build a film in no small part because Kay began to sort of perform for the camera in some interesting ways and help direct me. And so in that sense, it's a little bit collaborative, and there's sort of a blurring of our different feelings and intentions.
But before we go on to the others, but Carmine, you obviously had to probably be careful about not exploiting them.
Yeah.
And not showing them as, as other. So I think that process you're talking about is about that.
Yeah, and the filmmaker Shirley Clark has a thing when she's talking about Portrait of Jason, which is that like she chose Jason as the subject of her film because she knew that in the end Jason would win and would sort of come out on top. And I very much felt that with Kay, that there is sort of this self-possession and different valences of the term, this like self-possession, which was so like sort of utterly compelling that I sort of trusted her in not letting me take advantage of the situation, that she sort of, I feel like she had control over the situation in a way I really admired and a way that really directed the film.
Yoav, want to respond?
So like about the relationship with the character, I guess, like that was the.
I mean, I think it's more to the point of having someone whose beliefs may be far-fetched, but also showing them in a sympathetic way, right? You're writing a fine line here between maybe how to portray him in a way that you don't make fun of him, right? I mean, like I said, he may be crazy, but he's also charming and charismatic, and maybe some people watching the film will be like, hey, maybe I'll try this. So I think that's a delicate line you're
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of like common to all of my films, So it's like I never made a film about someone who I really kind of like admired, or this kind of like films that portray some kind of a protagonist, a hero that you just think is good, and you're kind of like a little bit of an admirer. So I mean, actually, Maya was working with me on a film called Defamation, which portrayed the Anti-Defamation League, and Abe Foxman, the head of the Anti-Defamation League, one of the most powerful figures in the Jewish politics, So I mean, he was also someone that like you kind of like in the film. You kind of like make fun of in the film. I mean, it's always kind of like a delicate line. So for me, I mean, I'm trying to look at my characters at eye level. This is how I see them. A lot of the time, they're not happy with it. I mean, Rael was more gracious than Abe Foxman once you've seen the film in the way he was portrayed. So not everybody is going to like the way they see themselves in the film, because obviously it's my point of view, it's my look at them, and once they agreed to play part in the film, then it's kind of like they're in a game, right? So like if before I mentioned religion is a game, so the film is also a game, and like it has its own rules, and in these rules I kind of like I portray them the way I see them. So I mean, I'm not there to ridicule them, never. That's that's a lot of the time it's very easy, so it's some filmmakers, they like to ridicule their subjects. I'm not there, like there's a thin line between looking at them in a sort of like sober way, the way I see them, which is often very different from the way they would like to be perceived by me or by the world. That's a chance when you participate in a film. You have to know that. But also, I never become friends with the people I film. They're not my friends. They are people who I'm making a documentary about. There is a very strict line. So I would never, for example, let them like buy me even a beer or something like that. So it's always kind of like, this is, these people, they have their own agenda. I want to be free to make my own thing. And then eventually it's a thin line that you have to walk on. So even if the people are kind of like, with Rael, so Rael received a lot of very negative press throughout the years, so it was kind of like an obstacle that I needed to kind of like to overcome. So maybe Abe Foxman, for example, from the other film, or Professor Zimbardo, also a famous American figure who I made a film about, maybe they came with like, with a much better sort of like status than Rael. But still, I mean, for me, it's the same. I have my own point of view, which I think it's my right to exercise. It's their right not to participate in the film, but once they decided to come along on this ride, then it's then they just have to accept these are the rules.
Maya? We talked a little bit about this yesterday during your Q&A, but yeah.
Yeah, so I think for me, it's, yeah, I'm always, on my previous film, I also portrayed people that I kind of had nothing to do with them. And I looked yesterday when Yael, one of my characters, this film, Until Kingdom Come, and she's the head of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. And so, of course, she knew that I'm not making infomercial for her organization. And she was keep asking me, so where's the problem? And it was really interesting because in my opinion, the problem was all over the place. But it's interesting how people, when they, in their perspective, they cannot really sometimes see what is the situation that they are in and how people from outside will perceive them. But on the same time, it's really important for me that, and at some point she asked me, what do you want me to think when I will watch the film? And I told her, I want you to think that I saw you. And that's really important for me, that people will watch the film and say, yeah, this is me. Like, maybe it's not like a portrait in a pink portrait, very nice, everything in beautiful colors. But I do think that it's important that they will recognize themselves and will say, yeah, like, so and the other side of that, I think it was really important for me that people, from that can easily put that could easily put Boyd, the pastor, he's like almost a caricature, can be almost a caricature of everything that they hate. He has guns, the film starts with a shooting scene, and he has a very heavy Southern accent, and he's a pastor, and he says things like, that's where we start our indoctrination with kids. Like all these things that the liberal audience will kind of say, oh my God, who's this crazy guy? But it was really important for me to kind of play with my audience and to make them to like him, because I liked him. Yeah, like he's a guy that went through so much. He almost died when he was 21, so he suffered a lot, and he's a deep person. So not by accident, my film starts when he's quoting Shakespeare. And I would never think him to ask him to quote Shakespeare, but he just did it in a shooting, he's shooting. And that's what I like in him, because I know that that's the moment when I'm starting to play with the mind of my viewers and saying, wait a minute, so I like him, I don't like him. And it's important for me that the audience will like him as well. And at the end of the film, he probably will break their heart, just as it broke mine. Because I really thought that he can, I took him, one of the last scenes in the film is when I'm taking him, we're going to visit a Palestinian pastor in Bethlehem. And it's really incredible, because you basically see two pastors sitting and talking with each other, and just has a totally opposite of views, and Boyd just cannot see the suffering of the Palestinian people, and I was very much sure that actually he will show some some compassion to them, and what it didn't happen. So he broke my heart. But it's still important for me, because I'm going with them for a ride. You know, I have to like them and I have to love them. Otherwise, I'm spending 3 years of my life with people that I hate, which is like, yeah, that's not fun at all. So I always have this emotional roller coaster with my characters, and I'm allowing myself to go into it because I know that eventually I will come out and yeah, because I know what I want to tell. But I do think it's important to be lost sometimes and think, wait a minute, so what is going on here? Because it's complicated.
Yeah. So obviously the starting points, like when you decided all to make these movies, were I'm sure very different for different reasons. But I'm wondering do you feel like our current moment in our societies and religion's role in what's happening in our world, do you think like we're coming to some kind of head? Do you feel like that if we can sort of think about our current world or the world when you started making the movie, did that play into the making of your films? If you know what I'm asking, or was it really just more specific, more targeted? Like Yoav got this letter, or Carmine, you mentioned you knew the son of the filmmaker, or Maya, you were aware of the Trump's rise to power, or were there something maybe like, more global or more, bigger involved with, your sense of what's happening with people and religion in society today? Anyone want to?
I start because, yeah, my answer is very much yes. I actually started this because I recognize this. We think that we live in a secular world, right? And at least in the surface. But then when I came across this story, I was really amazed about this influence under the surface that exists here from this huge, very religion power. And in Israel, basically, people mostly not aware of that. They know kind of, they have a very broader understanding of this. Yeah, these Christians that love us, and thank God finally someone loves us and doesn't hate us, so let's just take it. And I think, and it's interesting because I started to film it before Trump actually started to give gifts to the Christian evangelicals, and then I'm filming these gifts, like moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, like making all the deal of the century, very much influenced by the Christian evangelicals. And we were so close to the situation when Israel is annexing all the West Bank, or at least partially. So, and it was amazing for me to see how this very secular leader is actually totally depends on a very religious powers. And yeah, this film is also, it's very much about the role of religion in the 21st century and how it's influencing lives of millions.
Carmine, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so I filmed it last summer, sort of as an extension of projects I'm doing on sort of isolation in rural life, and now that COVID has happened, I feel like the film has a different meaning or situated differently, right? Because it's these two people who like basically live in like alone with sort of apocalyptic ideation. And so now we're living in a sort of like more apocalyptic world, all sort of alone and separated. And I don't know what that does to the film. I think I'm like too close to it, or I don't have enough perspective. I don't know if it makes it more uncanny or less or what, but it somehow has sort of collided with the current moment in a way I didn't anticipate.
Go up.
Yeah, I mean, my film started by chance in a way. Like the starting point was not kind of like the film found me in a way. I didn't find the film. So I'm not gonna give any spoilers, but once you watch the film, you understand. And then, I mean, living in Israel, you cannot really avoid religion. You know, it's all around us all the time, constantly. Um, and for me, this film was kind of like a way to take this story, this little story, some people might call far-fetched or, you know, absurd or whatever, and just like think about other things that happened here. You know, like Jesus walking on water, being resurrected, was here. Muhammad, you know, taking a horse from Jerusalem, flying to Saudi Arabia, which we might be able to do soon, thanks to evangelistic friends. Maybe they helped a little bit with Netanyahu and his like new friends. You know, our prophets, you know, was their kind of like playground. So and all of these prophets, you know, are coming with like really far-fetched stories when you think about it. But still, we believe them. It's part of our culture. It's part of our inheritance. So I think for me, I mean, religion. I mean, Nietzsche said God was dead over 100 years ago. I think you know, it's quite easy to see that he's still very much alive in people's hearts. I think I read a survey recently that I think it was like maybe over 50% of Americans believe in the devil. So I mean, you're living in one of the most religious countries on earth, obviously. Not less religion than Iran, I would say. Even maybe, you know, you don't wear the burqa and stuff like that. But I think in heart, I think the U.S. is actually maybe even more religious than Iran and other places which we perceive as being very religious. So it's a story that's never going to end. I mean, as long as people are going to feel the need to believe and have faith, religion will exist. So so I think it's kind of like it's a story that will always be fresh.
I was going to ask, is it more than coincidence that the two of the filmmakers are from Israel in this, you know, in this conversation? You kind of answered that, yeah.
No, I think I agree with Yoav that United States, to be honest, I wasn't really familiar with that before I made this film, but I think it's a very religious place, and I think it's you know, it's very interesting to see how it's so rooted, and you know, here, when that's maybe a very big difference, you know, when you see religious Jewish people, they usually would be wearing something that you will recognize them as religious, and when, you know, Christian evangelicals just wearing the same clothes that we are, and there's something really, like, you know, when we arrived to Middleborough, Kentucky, at the beginning it felt like it's, you know, it's a totally, like, yeah, it's like a normal place, and it is a normal place, but then when you start to dig a little bit, you just understand the religion there, and I was saying that it's a place where you're in the hands of the God or in the hands of devil. There's like no middle. And churches there is basically, I have one woman that it's not in the film, but she says at some point, she said to me, you know, there's so many churches here, I wish there will be one rehab. And that's the thing in these areas, and you see how the church is taking such a huge role in this community, because, you know, when we're filming these really unfortunate kids, and it's a place where more than 50% of kids living under the poverty line, this is just really a terrible place to live, and you see how the church is going and bringing these unfortunate kids to the church every Wednesday evening, and yes, they talking with them, and basically, you know, well, Pastor Boyd says it, making them this indoctrination, you know, about Jesus and about God and about everything. But then at the end, they give them a slice of pizza, and that's the only dinner that these kids will have. And, you know, as a totally secular person, but still as a human being, when you ask me what is better for kids, to be brainwashed and get a pizza or just to go to sleep hungry, I would say, you know what, bring the pizza. Because, and I think that's something that the secular society really need to look into it and say how it happens that the only hope for these people in these very unfortunate areas, it's just the religion. They have no other choice almost, you know. It's and I think it's kind of reveals why the religion is so powerful these days.
Yeah. Bring the pizza. I'm going to remember that line. That's like why Trump is winning in so many states.
Totally.
Because they think he brings the pizza.
Yes, yeah, totally. And you know, and yes, these churches are raising more and more generations of people that will go and will vote to a very specific party, you know. And one of the reasons that I had this opportunity to film this community, also to bring kind of to the awareness of the American audience, just kind of to see what happens on your backyard.
Do you have any questions for each other? I know some of you have. I know you all haven't seen each other's work, but some of you have. Yoav, have you seen Maya's film? Maya, have you seen Yoav's film?
I haven't
yet, unfortunately. But we will exchange links after this conversation.
Yes, we will. We were busy.
So
And with you, Tammy and Carmine. So let's all exchange.
I've actually seen your films. I had a question because both of your films end in a very similar and sort of striking way. I don't want to give it away if you haven't seen the other person's film, but they both end with a sort of like hypothetical statement. It's very, very odd. In both cases, the pastor in Till Kingdom Come, or the prophet, sort of speaks like as if like in the subjunctive case, right? Like, well, what if it's true? Or in Till Kingdom Come, right? Like there's this very eerie way that I don't want to give too much away, but in both cases it ends in this weird hypothetical statement with both of the main characters. And I was wondering sort of what motivated that ending and what that might say about the project, about the characters, about the sort of larger topic.
Yoav, you want to start?
Yeah, I don't know. Like ending a film is very difficult. Maybe even more difficult than to start a film. I don't know. I don't have like a really good answer for that. It was just a way to finish it. You know, could have finished it maybe differently. So a lot of the time it just depends on also on the general tone. So you need to kind of like finish up in a way which makes sense in terms of form. We had few endings. We went for this one eventually. So yeah, I like the kind of like aquarium. You know, there are many fish in the sea. This kind of like many possibilities, and then the narration hints to that possibility. That there are many possibilities for, you know, there's more than one possibility. You know, like of what you want to choose or not choose. So I wanted the audience. I mean, it's kind of like it's difficult to say, but I wanted people to kind of like to go out of the film with kind of like with certain thoughts, maybe less open than, you know, some people would like. I think it's kind of like especially since the film is like narrated by me and it's kind of like a little bit personal film. So I felt as if I couldn't leave it without this kind of like final statement. And Rael being the protagonist of the film, it made sense that he's going to be there kind of like really towards the end, even though it doesn't have like the final say. The professor has the final say in a way. So yeah, so I don't know. It's kind of like it's a good question, but it's a tough one to answer.
So for myself, I think, and we discussed it yesterday, the favorite word in yesterday Q&A was an elephant, because basically through the whole film, people talking about the elephant in the room, but no one actually looks into the elephant's eyes, and everyone trying to avoid this. And basically, of course, the elephant in the room is the fact that the basis of the Christian evangelical belief is that the Jews are, when the end of times happens, the Jews, 2/3 of them will die, and 1/3 will convert to Christianity. So and somehow both sides are succeeding to avoid to, there's this amazing level of hypocrisy that they're succeeding to achieve, by basically deciding we're not going to talk about this. So and I think for myself also, and I'm a Jewish person, and so this elephant was also exist with me and with my producer and cameraman A.B. Tron, because through all this process that they did try to convert us, and it started very gently, and towards the end it wasn't so gently. Like, no one pushed us into the pool, but besides that, they basically tried to do everything. And I think that the end, which I don't want to give up too much of it, I do think that there was this moment when the pastor really, looks into the elephant's eyes and says it, and yeah, he says it in a way that you don't want me to say. And I think it's amazing because, he kind of, and he reveals it, and in a way, and again, I won't say what he's saying, but that's what I want to say to my audience as well. And I really love the fact that my statement is said by evangelical pastors, and we both agree on this statement. So it was two things: the elephant, and really, because I'm not exist in the film at all. I have like 4 questions that I'm asking. It's not narrated at all. And I really enjoyed the fact that, that there is a final statement, and I totally agree with it, and it's said by an evangelical pastor.
Carmine, did you take away anything different?
In the other two, in the 2 films, I mean, maybe one thing is just the difficulty of, I mean, and this comes up in Prophet and the Space Alien, of sort of like looking for a statement that's like the big reveal, right? And your frustration that you don't really like catch him saying anything that's like, here's what I'm actually doing, or here's the secret behind the story. And it's sort of playing, it's like that hypothetical statement is sort of the closest we can kind of get in this slippery world to a statement that is direct. It's like direction through the sort of indirection, the truth through the hypothetical. And it seemed like in both cases, these things could only be said or only suggested in a denial of what it's saying.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting stuff. Well, I think this is good. I think we can wrap it up now. Yoav, we're going to be talking in a couple hours for your live stream Q&A. So I will see you soon. Maya, I hope to see you again soon sometime. And Carmine, someday we're don't live that far away from each other. So hopefully we'll connect in the Chicago or Madison area sometime.
That'd be great.
All right. Thanks so much for talking about your films.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good luck with the Q&A.
Thank you. Take care.